She was the last woman standing on that auction platform. July 1883, Texas heat so brutal it could kill a man. Every other bride had been chosen, but not her. Barren, they called her. Damaged goods. Defective merchandise. The crowd laughed. A cruel man named Marcus Boone stepped forward, ready to claim her like cattle. His eyes told her exactly what he planned to do. But then she said one word that changed everything. No. And in that moment, a stranger pushed through the crowd, a broken rancher who hadn't spoken to anyone in 5 years. A man haunted by a dead wife he couldn't save. He didn't offer her love. He offered her something rarer. A door that locks from the inside. What happens when the woman nobody wanted meets the man nobody understands? When a ruthless enemy poisons their water, burns their land, and tries to destroy everything they're building. This is Clara's story, and it will change how you see your own worth. What you'll learn from this story. Your value is never determined by those who reject you. It's revealed by those who truly see you. Being damaged doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. Sometimes it means you're being saved for the one person who matters most. If Clara's courage moved you, leave a comment. What moment made you realize your own worth? Hit like if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. Share this with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And subscribe, because stories like this are just the beginning. It was July 14th, 1883 in Dusty Creek, Texas, and the heat was a blistering curse. Clara was so thirsty her tongue felt like sandpaper, but she'd refused water twice. You never show weakness when the wolves are watching. Gus Harmon, the auctioneer, called out the women one by one. A fine seamstress, a strong cook for a mining camp, they all got picked. The young and the pretty went first, leaving Clara to watch them go. The crowd moved in closer with every woman chosen, their smells of sweat and souring perfume thick in the July air. Soon, only a few were left. "Something must be wrong with that one," a voice muttered from the crowd. "Heard she got sent back." Then there were 2, then just 1. Clara dug her fingernails into her palms until she felt the sting of blood. Gus Harmon wiped his sweaty face and tried to sell the last woman. "Gentlemen, we have Miss Clara Whitfield, an educated lady from Boston. She can read, write, and do figures." A man yelled out, "Then why ain't she married?" The crowd went quiet. That is when Marcus Boone pushed his way to the front, his boots heavy on the wooden planks. He was a big, mean-looking man with predator's eyes. "I can tell you why," he boomed. "She was married for 4 years to a Boston merchant who sent her right back. You know why?" He let the word hang in the air. "Barren. A doctor in Boston said so. She is defective merchandise, gentlemen." The laughter started as a low rumble and grew into a roar. Clara's vision swam, but she kept her spine as straight as a board. If she crumbled now, she would never stand again. "No wonder she's here," someone hollered. "Who'd want that?" Boone raised a hand for silence, a nasty smile on his face. "Now hold on. She's still got 2 good hands. She can cook and clean and other things." His eyes roamed over her body. "I'll take her. Nobody else wants her." But Clara's head snapped toward him. "No." The word was clear and strong. Boone's smile vanished. "What did you say?" Clara met his gaze. "I said no. I am not going with you." The silence was deafening. Then Boone let out a cold, ugly laugh. "Sweetheart, you are the reject. You do not get to say no." A new voice, rough and deep, cut through the tension. "She said no." The crowd parted to let a man through. He was tall, with clothes worn from hard work and a face weathered by the sun. His gray-green eyes met Clara's, but he looked at her bleeding hands, not her body. "Who in the hell are you?" Boone demanded. The man answered, "Elijah Brennan." Whispers shot through the crowd. Brennan was the rancher from north of town whose wife had died 5 years ago. He never came to town. Boone's jaw was tight. "Brennan, you ain't been in the market for a wife." Eli never took his eyes off Clara. "I changed my mind." "You what?" Boone sputtered. "I already claimed her." Eli's voice was quiet but heavy. "Did she accept?" "She does not get to." "Did she accept?" Boone's face turned red as a beet. "She is damaged goods, Brennan, barren as a rock. What do you want with her?" Eli ignored him and walked right up to the platform, looking up at Clara. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady, "my name is Elijah Brennan. I have 200 acres and no patience for foolish games. I am not offering you romance, just honest work, fair treatment, and a door that locks from the inside. Are you interested?" Clara could barely speak. "Why me?" she asked. "You heard him." Eli cut her off. "I do not care what he said. You look like you know how to work, but I cannot." He held her gaze. "I do not need you to. I need a partner, someone to help run the place. Nothing more. A partner, not property." She thought about the boarding house, the whispers, the slow misery of being unwanted. "No," she said softly. "I do not have anywhere better to be." "Then let's go," he said, turning to Harmon to draw up the papers. Boone grabbed Eli's arm, yelling, "Now wait just a minute." Eli just looked down at Boone's hand, then back at his face, and something silent passed between them. Boone snatched his hand back like he'd touched a hot skillet. "This is not over, Brennan." "Yeah, it is," Eli said, turning his back on him completely. He looked to Clara. "Are you coming?" She grabbed her bag and walked to the stairs. When she reached the bottom, Eli was waiting patiently. He did not offer to help, he just nodded. "The wagon is this way." They walked through the silent crowd. Clara felt their stares and heard them whispering. "Two broken people," someone said. "Give it a month, she'll be back or dead." Clara just kept walking. She climbed into the simple work wagon and Eli took the reins. As they rode out of Dusty Creek, she finally spoke. "That man, Boone, he's not going to let this go." "Probably not," Eli replied calmly. "You have made an enemy. I have had them before. You do not know what he is capable of." Eli guided the mules around a deep rut. "I know what I am capable of." After a moment, Clara had to ask, "Why did you really do it? Why choose me? And do not just say it is because I can work." Eli was quiet for a long time as the wagon rolled on. "You did not beg," he said finally. "Back there, with the whole town laughing at you and calling you names. You just stood there." He glanced over at her. "You did not beg." Clara's throat felt tight. "I was too tired to beg." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe you have more steel in your spine than most men in that town." He then said, "I saw your hands." Clara looked down at the dried blood in her palms. "You were hurting yourself to keep from breaking," Eli observed. "I saw that in the war. Men who would rather bleed than show the world their pain." He paused. "It takes a certain kind of strength, or a certain kind of broken. Sometimes those are the same thing." The prairie slowly turned to rolling hills. Eli pointed toward a rise. "The ranch is just over there. The house has 4 rooms, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The parlor ain't ever used. One of the bedrooms is yours, and it has its own door to the outside with a bolt on the inside. You use it." A little tension left Clara's shoulders. "I keep to myself," Eli continued. "I don't go to town, and I don't have company. I don't figure that will change. That suits me just fine. The workday starts before the sun is up and ends after it is down. I am not scared of hard work. I know." He stopped for a second. "One more thing. I have 2 helpers, Samuel and Martha Chen. They are Chinese, if that is a problem for you." "It is not." Eli looked over at her. "Most people have their opinions. Most people can keep their opinions to themselves." Clara held her head high. I have spent 4 years being judged for things I could not help. The last thing I'm going to do is the same thing to someone else. Something in his face softened, not quite a smile, but close. We will get along all right, Miss Whitfield. The word tasted like ash. My divorce is final. Then I reckon it is Miss now. He paused. Or Mrs. Brennan, if that makes it easier. That name felt like it belonged to a stranger. Let us just see if I make it through the week first. When they reached the top of the hill, she saw it. A plain house made of rough wood and cedar. A barn and corral stood off to one side. There was no garden, no flowers, just a place built to survive. It is not much, Eli said. It is perfect. He gave her a sharp look. It has walls, Clara said. And it has a door. And nobody here is going to treat me like I am dirt. That makes it perfect. Eli was silent for a spell. Are you always this plain-spoken? Only since I quit caring what folks think. And when was that? About 3 hours ago. 2 people came out from the barn, a Chinese man and woman watching them arrive. Samuel, Martha. Eli got down and nodded to them. This here is Miss Whitfield. She is staying. Martha's eyebrows went up. Samuel's face was like stone. Miss Whitfield. Martha came forward. You need some water? Lord, yes. A small smile touched Martha's lips. Come, I will show you the house. Clara went inside with her, leaving the men with the mules. The kitchen was bare, a stove, a table with 2 chairs, and some mismatched dishes on a shelf. Mr. Brennan keeps a tidy house, Martha said, pumping water into a cup. His mother raised him right. She passed on a long time ago. Martha gave her the cup. Before the wife. The wife. Clara drank the cool, metallic water. Your room is back there. Martha pointed. Mr. Brennan built it last month, right after he wrote that letter. The letter to the agency. Martha's voice was flat. We did not know he was planning on it. He keeps his business to himself. Clara went to the door and opened it. A small room with a simple bed, a washstand, and a few hooks. And on the inside of both her doors were new, shiny brass bolts. She touched one, feeling the smooth metal. He had built her a way out before he even knew her name. Miss Whitfield? Martha called from behind her. Are you all right? Clara quickly wiped at her wet eyes. Fine, just the dust. Martha did not push it and left her be. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her own bed, and just stared at those bolts. She thought of Henry, who never cared what she wanted. She thought of her father, who had shut a door in her face. And she thought of Elijah Brennan, who had asked if she was interested before anything else. The outside door was open a crack, letting in a hot Texas wind. She could see Eli talking with Samuel near the barn. He glanced at the house and their eyes met. She expected him to look away, but he did not. He just gave her one slow, deliberate nod before turning back to his work. She tested the door, swinging it open and shut. The new bolt slid home without a sound. She was free to go any time she pleased, and somehow that made her want to stay. Supper was just beans and cornbread, but it was hot and more food than she had seen in 3 days. They ate at the kitchen table, just the 2 of them. You will want to rest up tomorrow, Eli said. I would rather work. Sitting still gives me too much time to think. He nodded. I know that feeling. The chickens need tending out behind the barn. You can handle that? I can handle chickens. Good. Any eggs are yours to use or sell. Same goes for a kitchen garden if you are of a mind to plant one. It is late in the season, but turnips ought to grow. I know about gardens. My grandmother taught me. Before, Clara trailed off. Before what? Before I became a person she was ashamed of. Eli was quiet. Then he said, their loss. Just those 2 words. But Clara felt something that had been frozen inside her for 4 years start to crack. She stood up fast and started clearing the plates. Leave them. Eli's voice was rough. You have had a long day. I would rather just Clara. It was the first time he used her name. She stopped and looked at him. You do not have to earn your keep here, he said softly. Not tonight. Not ever. You are here because I asked you to come. That is enough. Her hands were shaking. "You should get some sleep," he said, standing up. "Tomorrow is going to be another hot one." "Mr. Brennan?" He paused at his door. "Thank you," Clara said, "for what you did back at the depot." He stood there for a long time. It was not anything. It was everything. Their eyes met across the dim room. "Get some rest," he said, and closed his door. Clara stayed in the quiet kitchen, listening to the ranch settle down for the night. She washed the dishes anyway. Then she went to her own room, and slid both bolts shut. Lying on the corn-shuck mattress, she could hear the faint sound of his boots on the floorboards through the thin wall. Then there was only silence. Clara stared up at the ceiling. This was her life now. This small room, this ranch, this quiet man who had offered her a place when no one else would. It was not a grand romance, just a chance to survive. But survival was a whole lot more than she had that morning. She closed her eyes and for the first time in 4 years, felt safe enough to fall asleep. She dreamed she was back on that train platform with a crowd of laughing, sneering faces all around her. She woke up with a gasp, her heart pounding. Moonlight cut through the window, painting the room in silver and black. For a second she was lost, reaching for a bed that was not there. Then she remembered. Texas. The ranch. Eli Brennan. It was all real. She lay still, calming herself when she heard a sound through the wall. It was a low mumbling. She pressed her ear against the wood. The words became clearer. "Miriam. Miriam, I am so sorry." There was a sharp gasp, a thud, and then silence. Clara held her breath. She heard footsteps, then a door creaking open. She peeked through a crack in her own door just in time to see Eli standing on the porch without a shirt, his back to her. His shoulders shook with ragged breaths. He stood like that for a long time before walking out toward the barn and vanishing into the dark. Clara bolted her door. Miriam. That must have been his dead wife. She knew that kind of grief. She had heard it in her own voice after Henry cast her out. It was a sorrow for something lost that could never be found again. She did not sleep for the rest of the night. She just lay there, thinking about two broken people and wondering if they could ever build something new together. When the rooster crowed, Clara was already dressed. The kitchen was empty and the coffee was cold. She built up the fire and had breakfast on the table by the time Eli came in from the pump, his face still damp. There were eggs, fresh biscuits, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. He stopped in the doorway. "You did not have to do this. Eat before it gets cold." He sat and took a bite. "Good biscuits. My grandmother's recipe." They ate without talking, but it was a comfortable quiet. When they finished, Eli stood. "I am heading to the north pasture to check the fences. Martha can show you whatever you need." "Mr. Brennan." He stopped at the door. "Last night," Clara said, choosing her words with care. "I heard you." His entire body went rigid. Through the wall, she went on. "You were dreaming." There was a long silence. "I am not asking you to explain," she said. "I just wanted you to know that I heard. That is all." Eli just stood there, frozen in place. "It happens some nights." His voice was like grinding stones. "If it is a problem I can move, it is not a problem." He turned to face her. "We all have our ghosts, Mr. Brennan." Clara met his eyes straight on. "Yours are just a bit louder." Something in his expression softened. "Eli," he said softly. "My name is Eli. If we are sharing a roof, you should use it." A quiet warmth spread through her. "All right, Eli." He gave a single nod. "I will be back by supper." He walked out, his boots crunching on the parched earth. Clara found Martha in the sad patch of dirt that passed for a garden. "Drought," Martha said, explaining the withered plants. "Not everything is dying." Clara knelt, feeling the soil. "This land just needs some help. Mulch to hold the water and some cloth for shade from the afternoon sun." Martha gave her a look of new respect. "You know your way around a garden. I know my way around surviving." Clara stood and brushed the dust from her hands. Where is the well? Martha pointed. Behind the house. But the water level is getting mighty low. Mr. Brennan is worried. Clara took a tour of the ranch. The barn, the chicken coop, the smokehouse. Everything was simple and built to last, but with no frills. The first Mrs. Brennan had big plans, Martha told her. She wanted to paint and plant flowers, make the place pretty. What happened to her? The baby came too soon. She died trying to bring it into the world. The baby died as well. Mr. Brennan buried them both himself up on that hill. Clara looked up and saw 2 wooden crosses against the sky. He never talks about it, Martha said. But sometimes he goes up there late at night. He is a good man, just broken. Do not cause him more pain. I am not here to hurt anyone. I know, Martha replied, but sometimes folks get hurt by accident. The rest of the day was filled with hard work, which was a comfort to Clara. She cleaned, she mended, she pulled weeds. By evening, she had changed into her last clean dress, a faded blue one, and started cooking supper. Eli returned as the sun was setting, covered in dust and looking tired. A lot of the fence posts are rotted out, he said, washing his face. I can help with that. You know about fencing, I can learn. He looked at her then, truly seeing her for the first time. Yeah, he said after a moment. I reckon you can. They ate their meal talking about the ranch and the drought. Simple, safe topics. But underneath, Clara felt a connection forming between 2 damaged souls. Later, they sat on the porch in the growing dark. Eli mended a piece of leather while Clara worked on some sewing. I never thought I would do this again, Eli said quietly. Sit on this porch with somebody. After Miriam, I was done with it all. What made you change your mind? He was quiet for a long time. I just got tired, he finally said. Tired of being alone with my ghosts. Clara paused her sewing. I understand that feeling. Their eyes met across the darkness. A coyote howled, breaking the spell. I should get to sleep, Eli said, standing up. I have to ride into town for supplies tomorrow. I will go with you. Are you sure? After what happened yesterday? I am sure, Clara said, standing as well. A person cannot hide forever. Eli looked at her face and nodded. We will leave at first light. At her bedroom door, she stopped him. Eli, thank you for giving me work today. You did the giving, he said. Those biscuits you made were worth the trip alone. He almost smiled. Good night, Eli. Good night, Clara. She closed her door and slid the bolt, but this time it felt like she was protecting something precious inside, not shutting the world out. Dawn arrived harsh and bright. Clara was ready, her spine straight. If the town of Dusty Creek wanted to stare, she would let them. She was finished with shame. Eli helped her onto the wagon, offering his hand. His palm was calloused and warm. Ready? He asked. She looked toward the town that had judged her. Ready. As the wagon rolled down the main street, every head turned. Clara felt their eyes on her, but kept her gaze forward. Eli stopped the wagon in front of the general store. Stay close, he said in a low voice. I can take care of myself. I know, but Boone has friends, and there is no sense in making it easy for them. Clara climbed down without waiting for his help, her boots hitting the dirt with a sense of purpose. They walked into the store together. The bell on the door announced their arrival, and all conversation stopped cold. Mr. Brennan, the shopkeeper said, surprised. I need flour, salt, and coffee, Eli said, ignoring the stares. And whatever the lady requires. The lady. Clara felt the other women in the store sizing her up. I need thread, she said, her voice firm. And any flower seeds you might have. Flower seeds? One of the women sneered. Planning to brighten up that boneyard of a ranch? Clara turned to face her. The woman was dressed in fancy silk that did not belong in the Texas heat. I do not believe we have met, Clara said. Josephine Caldwell, the woman replied. I own the largest spread in 3 counties. I know who you are, she continued, her eyes like chips of ice. The barren bride from Boston. The other women giggled. The familiar sting of shame tried to rise in Clara, but she pushed it down. Now Eli Brennan was a fine man. For his wife passed, and he got peculiar. I'd hoped my own Charlotte could bring him round, but she just gave Clara a look that could curdle milk, as if he was settling for scraps. The general store went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. A hot fire started building in Clara's chest. For 4 long years she'd swallowed their poison. 4 years of smiling while they tore her to shreds with their whispers. But today, that was over. "Mrs. Caldwell," Clara's voice was as calm and cool as river water. "I reckon you're used to being the biggest catfish in this little pond. But let's get one thing straight." She stepped right up close enough to see the face powder settled in Josephine's wrinkles. "I don't give a damn what you think of me, or what anyone else in this town thinks. Your opinion means less than nothing to me." Josephine's face went from pale to beet red. "Why, how dare you?" "I ain't finished." Clara held up a hand. "You want to gossip? Fine. But if you ever, and I mean ever, talk to me like that again, you'll regret it. I'll just tell everyone the plain truth I see, that you're a bitter, lonely woman whose best days were 20 years ago, and you can't stand to see anyone else find a lick of happiness." Dead silence. Then one of the younger girls, Charlotte, let out a little snort. "Charlotte," Josephine hissed. "Sorry, Mama." But the girl gave Clara a look that was pure respect. Josephine yanked her skirts together. "You'll live to regret this." And she stormed out, the other ladies following her like little chicks. The shopkeeper cleared his throat. "That'll be $3 for the supplies, Mr. Brennan." Eli paid, loaded the wagon, and helped Clara up, all without saying a word. They were a good mile out of town when he finally spoke. "Didn't know you had that kind of fight in you." Clara's hands were still trembling. "Neither did I." "Josephine Caldwell is a bad woman to make an enemy of," he said, matter of fact. "I know. She's got money, and folks in her pocket all over this county. I know that too." Eli was quiet for a spell. "Still, that was the finest thing I've seen in 5 years. Clara looked over at him. He wasn't smiling. His face didn't seem made for it, but his eyes had a new kind of warmth. "She had it coming," Clara said. "She's had it coming for a decade," he replied, clicking his tongue at the mules. "Nobody ever had the grit to give it to her. Till today." They rode on in the growing heat. "Eli?" "Yeah?" "What she said about you getting peculiar after your wife, is that what people say?" He took his time answering. "People say all sorts of things. But is it true?" The wagon wheels just creaked along for a long while. "After Miriam died," he said finally, "I didn't leave the ranch for 8 months. Didn't talk to a soul. Some days I didn't eat. Just worked, till I dropped." Clara listened. "Samuel found me passed out in the north pasture, half dead from the sun. He and Martha, they took care of me. They wouldn't let me give up." "You wanted to die?" He glanced at her, his jaw tight. "I wanted to stop feeling about the same thing." Clara thought about the nights she'd stood by the Charles River, thinking how easy it would be to just let the dark water take her. "Yes," she said softly. "I understand." They didn't talk much after that, but something had changed. A wall between them had started to crumble. When they got to the ranch, Martha ran out, her face knotted with worry. "There's trouble in the south pasture. Samuel went to check on it, and he ain't come back." Eli was out of the wagon in a flash. "How long? 3 hours, maybe 4? "Ah, damn it." Eli grabbed his rifle. "Which way'd he go?" "Toward the creek bed, said he heard something. Or someone," Eli finished, his voice grim. "Boone." The name hung in the air. Eli swung onto one of the mules. "Stay here, both of you." "I'm coming with you," Clara said. "No." His voice was hard as iron. "If something's happened to Samuel, I need to know you two are safe." He kicked the mule and was gone in a cloud of dust. Martha pulled her inside. "Come on now." They locked the door, and Martha pulled a shotgun from the pantry, checking it with steady hands. "You know how to use that?" Clara asked. "Samuel taught me," Martha said, her eyes scared but her voice firm. "Mr. Brennan said everyone on this ranch needs to know how. He's a smart man." "Yes, he is," Martha peeked through the shutters. "But being smart, don't stop a bullet." The minutes dragged on. To fill the awful quiet, Clara asked, "Tell me about Samuel." Martha's face softened a bit. "We met on the railroad. I served the food, he cooked it. We had nothing but each other. Been married 7 years now. Feels like a good forever." The smile on her face faded. "We tried for children, for years. But some things just ain't meant to be." Clara's own heart ached. "I know that feeling." "I know you do," Martha said, taking Clara's hands. "Mr. Brennan told us what happened at the depot. He wanted us to understand." Clara's face burned with shame. "You and me," Martha went on, "we ain't so different. Judged for what our bodies can't do, but that don't make us worthless." Just then they heard hoofbeats pounding toward the house. Martha grabbed the shotgun. The door flew open. It was Eli, with Samuel thrown over his shoulder, covered in blood. "Help me get him to the table," Eli grunted. Samuel was unconscious, his face a swollen mess and his arm bent all wrong. A deep gash was bleeding from his side. "What happened?" Martha's voice trembled. "Found him by the creek. They beat him bad. He must have dragged himself 1/2 mile trying to get back." Clara looked at the wound. It was deep, but she thought it missed anything vital. "This needs to be stitched," she said, her voice sure. "I can do it." They got to work. Eli set the broken arm, his face like stone as the bone grated back into place. Samuel let out one awful scream and then passed out again. Clara, with Martha's help, stitched the gash on his side closed. When they were finished, Samuel was breathing steady. He was gonna live. "Who did this?" Clara asked, her voice low. Eli's jaw was a hard line. He held up a torn piece of a red bandana. "Found this. 3 sets of boot prints." "Boone's men wear red," Martha whispered. "Can't prove it was them," Eli said, his voice flat and cold as a snake. "But we know." Clara thought of Marcus Boone's greedy eyes. "He did this because of me, because I told him no." "Listen to me." Eli grabbed her shoulders gently. "This ain't about you. Samuel got hurt because Boone is a coward who attacks unarmed men. This is on him, not you, you understand?" Clara nodded, tears burning her eyes. "Good," Eli said, letting her go. "The sheriff's in Boone's pocket, so he's no help." He paced the kitchen floor. "Now we figure out how to handle this ourselves. We complain, and Boone just hits us harder, so we do nothing." Clara's voice rose with disbelief. "We just let him get away with this?" "I did not say that." "Then what are we going to do?" Eli stopped his pacing to look her straight in the eye. "We get proof. We find witnesses. We get something the sheriff cannot just ignore." His jaw was set like stone. "And if that does not work, we will handle it ourselves. Handle it how? Whatever it takes." A dark and fiery feeling that had been asleep for 4 years woke up inside Clara's chest. "Tell me what to do." Eli studied her face, saw the resolve there, and gave a slow nod. "First, we protect what is ours. Samuel will be laid up for weeks, maybe even months. That means the 3 of us have to run a ranch meant for 4 people. It is going to be hard. I can work. I know you can. But there is more." Eli stared out the window at the growing darkness. "This drought is getting worse. The water is running low. If we do not get some rain soon, we will lose the cattle. And if we lose the cattle, we lose everything. How low? The wells are nearly mud. The springs are barely a trickle. We might have 2 weeks of water left if we are careful." Clara's mind raced. The creek bed where they found Samuel. Is there water there? Not unless it rains, and it has not. Eli turned back to face her. "That creek has been bone dry for a month. Then why was Samuel even there?" Eli froze. Martha said he thought someone was cutting the fence. But if the creek is dry, Clara said, there is no reason for cattle to be down there. And why would anyone go all the way to a dry creek bed just to cut a fence? A look of understanding dawned on Eli's face. Unless they were not cutting a fence at all. Unless they were digging. Digging for what? Water. Eli grabbed his hat from the hook. There is an old underground spring that feeds into that creek. The old-timers always said it never runs dry, not even in the worst droughts. If someone found that spring and tapped into it, Clara finished for him, they would have the only source of water in the whole county. They could use it to break every single rancher within 50 miles. Including us, Eli said, his face now pale. Martha made a small, frightened sound. We need to go see what they were digging, Clara stated. Tomorrow. Eli's voice was firm. It is too dark now, and Boone's men might still be lurking out there. He shot the bolt on the door. Tonight we get some rest, we heal, and tomorrow we start fighting back. Clara wanted to argue, to ride out that very minute and make Boone pay for what he did to Samuel. But then she looked at Martha, who was kneeling beside her unconscious husband, and at Eli, who was exhausted and bloodied. She knew he was right. Tomorrow, she agreed. That night, Clara could not find any sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Underneath it all, she could hear Eli's steady footsteps pacing back and forth on the porch. Finally, she threw off her blanket to go find him. He was sitting there with his rifle laid across his knees, watching the darkness. You should be sleeping, he said without turning his head. So should you. I cannot. Me neither. Clara sat down near him, close enough to feel the warmth coming off him in the cool night air. Do you mind if I keep you company? Suit yourself. They sat together in a comfortable silence for a while. The stars were bright overhead. Coyotes howled in the distance. Samuel is going to be okay, Clara said, breaking the silence. Maybe. He will be. The doctor's stitching was clean. The bones were set properly. He just needs time to heal. Time? Eli let out a bitter laugh. That is the one thing we do not have. Without Samuel, I cannot run this ranch. Without water, all the cattle will die. Without the cattle, I will lose everything my father built. You will not lose it. You do not know that. No, but I do know this. Clara turned to face him in the dim light. You did not give up after Miriam died. You did not give up when everyone in town said you had gone crazy. You are not going to give up now. Eli was quiet for a long moment. Do you know why I really chose you at the depot? He asked her softly. Your heart skipped a beat. You said it was because I did not beg. That was part of it. He finally turned to look at her, his eyes shining like silver in the moonlight. I looked at you standing there. You were the last one left. The whole town was laughing at you. And I thought to myself, that woman knows exactly how bad things can get. She has already been through hell, and she is still standing. His voice dropped to a near whisper. I figured if anyone could handle what I have to offer here, the hard work, the isolation, the ghosts, it would be someone who had already survived their own. Clara's chest ached with a feeling she could not name. I'm not very good with words, I never have been. Miriam used to say I had the emotional range of a fence post. Fence posts are reliable. That is what she said too, he said with the ghost of a smile, right before she called me an idiot. Clara let out a short, surprised laugh. She sounds like she was really something. She was. The smile faded from his face, and losing her nearly killed me. It would have if Samuel and Martha had not been there for me. But you survived. Surviving is not the same as living, Clara. Eli's eyes met hers. I have just been surviving for the last 5 years. Mostly just going through the motions, waiting to die. And now... He was quiet for a long moment. Now I am starting to think that maybe there is something worth living for after all. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to say something, but her voice would not work. Before she could find the words, a light flickered on the horizon. Eli stood up so fast that his chair clattered to the floor. "What is it? Fire!" His voice was tight with tension. "In the south pasture." Clara could see it now. A line of orange was creeping across the darkness, growing brighter with every second. "The cattle. If that fire reaches the herd, we will lose everything." Eli was already moving, grabbing his rifle and shouting for Martha. "Wake Samuel if you can. We need every hand we can get." Clara ran for the barn. She found buckets and shovels, anything they could use to fight the fire. Martha came out of the house, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes were hard as steel. "Samuel is awake. He cannot move, but he can shoot if anyone comes for the house." "Good." Eli swung up onto a horse. "Clara, you stay here. Like hell I will." Clara grabbed the reins of the second horse. "This is my home now, too. I am not going to hide while it burns." He stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Stay close, and do not die. Same to you." They rode hard. The fire was much worse than it had looked from the house. It was a wall of flames stretching across the south pasture, driven by the wind, and eating up everything in its path. "Fire break!" Eli shouted over the roar. "We have to dig a trench. We have to turn the soil to stop the fire from spreading." They worked like demons. Martha appeared with shovels. They dug until their hands bled and their lungs burned from the smoke, until the heat was so intense Clara thought her skin might just melt off. The cattle were screaming in the darkness. They were horrible, terrified sounds. Some of them ran. Some of them did not run fast enough. Clara refused to look. She just dug and dug. Hours later, time had lost all meaning. The fire hit the trench and finally stopped. Clara collapsed onto the blackened earth, gasping for air. Eli fell down beside her. They had done it. They had saved the ranch. But the south pasture was completely gone. 20 acres of good grazing land had been turned to ash. Scattered across it were the dark shapes of the cattle that had not escaped. "How many did we lose?" Clara asked when she could finally breathe again. Eli's face was black with soot and streaked with sweat. "I will not know for sure until morning, but at least 30 head, maybe more. Can you survive that kind of loss?" "I do not know." His voice was hollow. "I honestly do not know." Martha crawled over to them and handed them a canteen of water. Clara drank deeply, then passed it to Eli. "It was set on purpose," Martha said. "I found the oil cans down by the fence line." Clara's exhaustion vanished. "It has to be Boone." Eli's hands clenched around the canteen. "He had Samuel beaten to distract us. Then he set this fire to finish the job. We need to tell someone. The sheriff, the marshal, someone. Who is going to believe us?" Eli's voice was bitter. "We have no witnesses, no proof. It is just a Chinese man's word and a mail-order bride's suspicion against Marcus Boone, whose family has been in this county for 3 generations. He was right. Clara knew he was right, and she hated it. So, what do we do now?" Eli was quiet for a long time. The embers of the fire glowed all around them like dying stars in the night. "We rebuild," he said finally. "We survive this, and we wait for Boone to make a mistake. And if he does not?" Eli's eyes met hers across the darkness. In them, Clara saw something she had not seen before. It was not grief or resignation. It was rage. "Then we make him make one." They rode back to the ranch as the dawn broke over the ruined pasture. Clara's body screamed with exhaustion. Her hands were raw, and her throat burned from the smoke, but she was alive. They were all alive. Samuel was sitting up when they got back, pale but alert. Martha fell into his arms, sobbing with relief. Eli went to check on the remaining cattle. Clara should have gone with him to help, but her legs gave out the moment she stepped onto the porch. She sat there as the sun rose, watching the light spread across their damaged land. 30 head of cattle were dead, and 20 acres were destroyed. But the fight had just begun. "You should be careful, Mr. Brennan," Josephine warned. "Damaged goods are always a bad investment." Before Eli could respond, Clara stepped forward. "A woman who knows so much about business," she said, "should know that what happens on another person's ranch is none of her concern." Back on the porch that night, Eli sat beside her. "You should try to sleep." "I cannot," she said. "I feel the same." They watched the sky begin to lighten. "Eli," she began, her heart pounding. "When you said you were starting to think there was something worth living for, what did you mean?" He turned and truly looked at her. "I think you already know." She did. "This is probably a terrible idea," she whispered. "Probably. We hardly know one another." "True. And a dangerous man wants to destroy us." "Also true. Then why does this feel like the only thing that makes any sense?" Eli's hand found hers, calloused and strong. "Because sometimes," he said, "the broken pieces are the only ones that fit together." Clara held on tight as they watched the sun rise on their new beginning. 3 days after the fire, the well gave out. Clara felt the awful emptiness as she pulled up the bucket, nothing but muck at the bottom. She dropped it and ran for the barn, yelling, "Eli, we have trouble." He came out holding a pitchfork, his face already a mask of grim duty. He had been dealing with the cattle they lost, 37 head in all. "The well is gone," she said. "Just mud." Eli shut his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his gaze was hard as iron. "Get Martha. We need a family meeting." In the kitchen, even a pale and slow-moving Samuel was present, his arm in a sling. Eli got straight to the point. "The spring is barely a trickle. It might be enough for us and the horses, but not for 200 cattle. The creek is dry as a bone." "So what are we going to do?" Clara asked, her voice steady even as she hid her trembling hands. Eli paused. "There is one other way. That underground spring Boone's men were digging for. We need to find out if they hit water. If they did, they control the only sure water in 50 miles. Every rancher will be at their mercy, desperate enough to pay Boone's price. Or desperate enough to fight for it," Samuel added quietly. Clara's mind started turning. "In town, I overheard folks talking. The Patterson place lost their well last week, and the Hendersons lost theirs before that." Eli's jaw clenched. "Patterson has 300 head. He is in the same boat as us." Clara stopped her pacing and faced them. "What if we don't fight Boone for the water? What if we offer to share it?" Eli stared at her like she had lost her mind. "Share it? That man is trying to ruin us." She met his gaze. "I am talking about our water. If we find that spring first, we dig it out and we share it with everyone. The Pattersons, the Hendersons, all of them." "Why in the world would we do that?" Eli demanded. "Because Boone is winning by keeping us all apart and scared." Clara's voice found its strength. "But if we give our neighbors something they desperately need, they will owe us. When it is time to face down Boone, they will stand right alongside us." "It is a smart play," Samuel said first, "but risky." Eli shook his head. "If we find water and just give it away, we have nothing left." "We have nothing now, Eli," Clara insisted. "The only thing that works out here is folks helping folks." "This is not Boston, Clara. This is exactly where it matters most," she said, stepping closer. "You told me you chose me because I stood up when others would have quit. I am asking you to stand up now, not just for us, but for everyone." Eli looked at her for a long time, then gave a single firm nod. "All right. We dig for that spring. And if we find it, we share." Relief washed over Clara. "But first," Eli added, "we have to know what Boone already found out. That means someone has to scout that creek bed." "I will go," Samuel offered. "Like hell you will," Martha shot back, grabbing his good arm. "You can hardly stand. I can still ride a horse." "Samuel, it has to be me." His voice was low but certain. "Boone's men know what Eli looks like. They would see him coming a mile off, but they will not even notice me." Clara hated that he was right. "I will go with him," she declared. "No," Eli's voice was sharp. "If they find Samuel by himself, they will finish the job. But with me there, a white woman, they will think twice. Even men like that are not bold enough to harm a woman in the light of day." "You do not know that for sure." "I know they are cowards," Clara said, her voice like flint. "They do their dirty work in the dark. They will not touch me when the sun is high." Eli looked torn. "I do not like it. You do not have to like it. You just have to trust me." The word hung in the air between them. "Fine," he finally whispered. "But you take my rifle. And you come straight back. No heroes. No heroes, Clara promised. They set out at dawn, with Eli watching from the porch, his face looking like it was carved from stone. "He worries about you," Samuel said as they rode. Clara did not reply. "I have known that man 5 years. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. We hardly know one another." "Sometimes that is all it takes," Samuel said, shifting in his saddle with a wince. After that, they rode in silence down the dry creek bed. An hour later, Samuel pointed. "Right there. That is where they got me." Clara saw the disturbed ground and dark stains on the rocks. Her stomach tightened. "The digging site is further on," he said. They got off their horses and walked, moving quieter now. The creek opened into a small clearing, and in the middle of it was exactly what they had been dreading. A hole, maybe 8 feet across and 10 feet deep, with timbers holding up the sides, and at the very bottom, shimmering in the light, was water. "They found it," Clara whispered. Samuel frowned. "Found it and just left it." "Why?" Clara's thoughts raced. "They are waiting. They are letting everyone else get good and thirsty. Then they will come back and claim it." A twig snapped behind them. Clara spun around, bringing the rifle up. At the edge of the trees stood Marcus Boone with 2 of his men. All of them were armed. "Well now," Boone said with a grin that showed all his teeth. "Look what wandered up to my water hole." "Your water hole? I thought this was open range." "It was. Now it is mine," Boone said, taking a step closer. "And you are trespassing." "We were just leaving," Clara said, grabbing Samuel's arm. "I do not think so." Boone's eyes roamed over her. "You have caused me a great deal of trouble, Miss Whitfield, made me look like a fool, and then you took up with that Brennan fellow." "That is not my problem." "It is now." Boone nodded to his men. "Take him." They were on Samuel in a flash. With only one good arm, he stood no chance. Clara leveled the rifle at Boone's chest. "Let him go." Boone just laughed. "You are not going to shoot me. Not in front of witnesses. I will if I have to." "No, you will not." Boone took another step. "You are not a killer. I can see it. You have got nerve, I will give you that. But you do not have what it takes to pull that trigger. You want to bet?" Clara's voice was steady as a rock. "I have got nothing left to lose." Doubt flickered in Boone's eyes before his ugly smile returned. "Maybe you do not, but he does." He motioned toward Samuel. "Put the rifle down, or my boys will break his other arm." Samuel's face was pale, but his voice was strong. "Do not do it, Clara." One of the men twisted his good arm, and Samuel cried out in pain. "Stop!" Clara yelled, lowering the rifle. "Please, stop!" Boone's smile widened. "That is better." He walked over and calmly took the rifle right out of her hands. Hands stood so close the smell of his cheap cigar was overpowering. "You know what I reckon?" His voice was low and slick with menace. "I think Brennan chose you, 'cause you're the only woman desperate enough to have him. A barren wife for a broken man. Y'all are quite the pair." Clara's fingernails bit into her own palms, drawing blood. The familiar ache. But this was different. "Here's the deal," Boone said, grabbing her chin and forcing her eyes to meet his. "I don't take kindly to being told no. And I sure as hell don't like being made a fool of. So you're going to do a little something for me." "What?" she choked out. "You're going to march right back to that husband of yours and tell him this water belongs to me, every last drop. And if he wants any for his cattle or his sorry patch of land, he'll pay $1 a gallon. Cash. That's robbery. That's business, darling." He let her go. "And if he don't pay," he glanced at Samuel, still on the ground, "well, accidents happen. Accidents. Fires start. Folks wind up in ditches." Clara was shaking with a rage so pure it burned. "You won't get away with this." "Sweetheart, I already have." Boone tipped his hat in a mocking gesture. "Now you run along home. Tell Brennan I'll be by to collect." He whistled, and his men let Samuel go, laughing as they rode off. The ride back to the ranch was a blur of dust and fury. Boone's words echoed in her head. His sneer burned into her memory. He looked at her like she was nothing, just like all the others. By the time they reached the ranch, she was barely holding on. Eli saw them coming. One look at their faces, and his own turned to stone. What happened? Boone. Clara's voice was brittle. He found us at the spring. Did he hurt you? Eli's eyes were on her, ignoring Samuel. No, I am fine, Samuel grunted, easing himself off his horse. But we have bigger problems. Inside, Clara explained everything, the water, the price, the threats. When she was done, Eli just stood there, dangerously still. Eli, Clara touched his arm. Say something. I am going to kill him. The words were quiet, spoken like he was just stating a fact. Eli, no. He put his hands on you. Eli's voice trembled with rage. He threatened you. He did not hurt me this time. And next time? Eli pulled away, pacing like a caged animal. What happens when he decides the money ain't enough? What then? Clara stepped in front of him, making him stop. Listen to me. If you go after him now, he wins. He will have you in jail or in a grave. And what happens to this ranch? To me? I cannot just do nothing, he seethed. You will not, Clara said, taking his hands. We will not. But we do this smart. We find allies. We prove what he is. We beat him the right way. And if the right way does not work? Clara saw Boone's cruel eyes in her mind. Then we do whatever it takes, she said softly. Together. Eli looked at her for a long moment. Then, something inside him just broke. Not his will, but that wall he kept built up around himself. He pulled her into his arms, holding on like he was afraid she would blow away in the dust. Clara was still for a second. Then she held him back just as tight. In the quiet of the kitchen, they were just two damaged people holding each other up. Martha gently led Samuel out of the room, leaving them alone. I thought I had lost you. Eli's voice was muffled in her hair. When you were not back by noon, I thought... I know, Clara whispered. I am sorry. Do not be sorry, just... He pulled back to look at her. Just do not go where I cannot follow again. I had to. I know you did. Does not make it any easier. He touched her cheek, his rough hand surprisingly gentle. Clara, He stopped. What? Nothing. It is too soon. You will think I am crazy. I already think you are crazy. You picked me at a bride auction. A small, rough sound that might have been a laugh escaped him. Fair point. Then say it. Eli was quiet for a long second, his eyes searching hers. I think I am falling in love with you. The words hit Clara like a punch to the gut. Every instinct she had screamed at her to run, that this was the part where men turned mean. But she did not move. Eli, you do not have to say that back. I know it is too fast. We barely... Eli. Clara put a finger to his lips. Shut up. And then she kissed him. It was not gentle. It was 4 years of being alone and scared and a tiny spark of hope all crashing together. His hands found her waist, pulling her flush against him as her fingers tangled in his hair. They broke apart, both of them breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. Is that your answer? He asked. That is the start of my answer, Clara said, her heart hammering. The rest depends on if you are still this interesting when this is all over. I will try my best not to bore you. See that you do not. They just stood there, breathing the same air. Outside, the sun was setting on another dangerous, dusty day. But inside, for the first time, something felt like hope. The next morning, Clara rode for the Patterson place. Eli had argued, but she was firm. If they were going to find allies, they had to start with the man who had the most to lose. Patterson's spread was bigger than Eli's, but the drought had hit it hard. Cattle stood around, looking sickly in bone-dry pastures. A well pump squeaked a useless rhythm. The same haunted look was in everyone's eyes. Patterson himself met her at his gate. Mr. Patterson was a man made of sun and grit, with hands as tough as old leather. He tipped his hat. "Mrs. Brennan, I didn't expect to see you out this way." Clara let him use the wrong name. It didn't matter. "I have a proposal for you," she said. Over weak coffee on his porch, she laid it all out. Boone had a stranglehold on the only water for 50 miles, and his price was meant to break them all. Patterson knew it. "So what are you suggesting?" he asked, his jaw tight. "We dig our own well," Clara explained. "On the open range, south of the creek. Samuel is certain there is another source down there. If we find it, the water is for everyone. Boone loses his power over us." Patterson considered her. "And what's in it for you?" "Your support. When the time comes to stand up to Boone, we stand together." He was quiet for a long time. "That's a mighty big risk." "Everything is a risk now," Clara said, leaning in. "But if we succeed, we will have water. We will have friends, and we will have each other." He studied her, then gave a slow nod. "You are not what I expected, Mrs. Brennan. I figured you were just desperate." "I was," she admitted. "But you're not anymore, are you?" Clara thought of Eli and the ranch that was starting to feel like a real home. "No," she said softly. "I am not." Patterson stood and offered his hand. "All right, I will talk to the others. If you find that water, we will be right there with you." Clara shook his firm hand and rode away. A weight lifted from her shoulders. The plan was actually working. She was halfway home when the sound of horses thundered behind her. 3 of them, coming up fast. She urged her mare into a run, but the long ride had worn the animal out. A quick look back confirmed her fear. It was Boone's men. Her blood went cold. The ranch was still 2 miles off, an impossible distance. She swerved toward a jumble of rocks, hoping for a place to hide. But her horse stumbled, sending her flying. She hit the ground hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. A pair of dusty boots stopped right in front of her face. "Well now," a cold voice said. A man with a scarred cheek and empty eyes pulled her to her feet. "The boss heard about your little chat with Patterson. Word gets around fast in these parts." "Shut your mouth," he snapped and struck her hard across the face. The world exploded in stars. "You are coming with us, and you're going to tell Mr. Boone every word you said." Clara spat blood at his feet. "Go to hell." The man raised his hand to hit her again, but the sharp crack of a rifle echoed across the plain. His hat flew from his head. A neat hole punched through it. Everyone froze. "The next one goes between your eyes," Eli's voice called out from the rocks above. "Let her go!" The men looked at each other, suddenly uncertain. "There is only one of you, Brennan," the scarred man shouted. "I have the high ground and a good rifle," Eli answered. "You have pistols and poor judgment. Let her go now." The scarred man's jaw worked as he weighed his chances. Finally, he shoved Clara away. "This is not over." "I never figured it was," Eli replied. The 3 men mounted up and galloped away. Clara stood shaking as Eli came to her side, his rifle still ready. "Are you hurt?" "He hit me," she said, her voice trembling. "But I'm all right." Eli saw the blood on her lip and the bruise already forming on her cheek. A terrifying stillness came over his face. "Eli," Clara said, grabbing his arm, "do not, please." "He put his hands on you." "I know," she said, "and we will deal with him. But not now. Not like this." "Please," Clara whispered again. "Just take me home." That broke through his rage. He lowered the rifle and pulled her into a hug, holding her tight as she trembled. "I have got you," he said. "You are safe now." But as they rode back, she could not forget the promise in the scarred man's dead eyes. That night sleep would not come. Her face ached and every little sound made her flinch. Finally, she wrapped a blanket around herself and went to sit on the porch steps under a sky full of stars. The door opened, and Eli sat down beside her, their shoulders touching. "I cannot sleep either," he said. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you had not been there." "But I was there," he said, taking her hand. "Clara, I meant what I said. I am falling for you. I will protect you with my life." "That is what I'm afraid of," she whispered, "that you will get hurt because of me." "Do you know why I built that extra room with a lock on the inside?" he asked softly. "It was for you. When I wrote to the bride agency, I was hoping for someone exactly like you. Someone who needed a safe place, a real choice." "How could you possibly know?" she asked. "I did not," he admitted. "I just hoped. Then I saw you on that train platform with the whole town laughing, and I knew you were the one I was waiting for." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "The real reason I chose you," she began, "is because I saw myself in you. You refused to break when it would have been easier." "That was not strength," she said. "I was just too tired to feel anything else." "Sometimes that is what strength looks like," he said, kissing her knuckles. "Just surviving." Something she had locked away for 4 long years finally cracked open inside her chest. "I am so scared, Eli." "Me too," he said with a faint smile. "Maybe we are just good at pretending we are not." They sat there in the quiet dark, holding hands, 2 people learning how to be afraid together instead of alone. The next morning they found the cattle by the spring. 17 of them, dead and bloated, their eyes staring at nothing. The smell was horrible. "Poison," Eli said, his voice hard as stone. "They poisoned our spring." Martha sank to her knees beside a young cow, her face a mask of grief. "Boone's making his point," Eli said, his hands clenched into fists. "Pay him or die." Clara felt her legs give way. She sat in the dirt, looking at the ruin of all their hard work. "We have to warn the others," she said, her voice thin. "If he did this to us, he will do it to them." "He will not have to," Eli said grimly. "Once word of this gets out, everyone will fall in line. That is what he wants." "Then we do not let word get out," Clara said, forcing herself to her feet. "We bury these cattle and we find another way. There has to be another way." Eli looked at her, truly looked at her, with the same intensity as that first day. "You do not ever give up, do you?" "I cannot afford to," she said. "And neither can you." A flicker of something that was not quite hope, but close to it, returned to his eyes. They were past hope. They had something harder now, something with more grit. "All right," he said, grabbing a shovel. "We bury our dead, then we fight." They worked all morning, digging graves for cattle they could not afford to lose. Clara's hands were raw and her back was aching something fierce, but she kept on. By noon, the awful job was done. They stood, 4 tired people, looking at the freshly turned dirt. "What now?" Martha asked. "Now," Clara wiped sweat from her brow. "We go to town. Boone thinks he has broken us. It is time to show him how wrong he is." "And do what?" "The one thing he will not expect." Clara looked right at Eli. "We tell the whole town the truth." "That is dangerous." Eli's jaw was tight. "So is sitting here waiting to die." The ride into Dusty Creek felt like it took forever. Clara knew all the things that could go wrong. Boone could have them thrown in jail. His men could be waiting. The town might turn on them. But doing nothing was a sure death sentence. They got there just as the church bell tolled noon. Perfect. Clara swung down from her horse right in front of the general store where folks were gathered. Every head turned. The whispers started up like dry leaves skittering across the dirt. "That is the barren one. Brennan's mail-order bride." Clara ignored them all. She walked to the middle of the street, Eli at her side. "Folks," her voice rang out clear, "I need you to listen to me." "And who do you think you are?" A sharp voice cut through the crowd. Josephine Caldwell pushed her way to the front. "You have been here 1 month, and y'all think you can just stand there silent? You deserve to know the truth. The truth about this drought, our water, and about Marcus Boone." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. What about Boone? A man named Patterson asked, his face wary. Clara's voice was steady as a rock. He's been poisoning water sources all over this county. Ours is fouled and yours is next. He has the only clean water left, and he's making folks pay $1 a gallon for it. That's a mighty serious thing to say, the sheriff said, pushing his way forward. You got any proof of that? I've got 17 dead cattle that drank from our poison spring. I've got folks who saw his men digging at the creek, and I've got this. Clara pulled out the red bandana they found near Samuel. Boone's men wear red. Every soul here knows it. They beat my friend half to death and set fire to our land. Could be anyone's bandana, the sheriff mumbled. That ain't proof. Then ask these people, Clara shot back, turning to the crowd. How many of you lost water this month? How many have had cattle turn up dead? How many had a visit from Boone's men with an offer you couldn't rightly refuse? A heavy silence fell. Then, one by one, hands began to rise. This is just ridiculous, Josephine Caldwell's sharp voice cut in. You're going to believe this. This what? Clara faced her. Go on, Mrs. Caldwell. Say it. Josephine's face soured. This piece of damaged goods, this barren woman that nobody wanted. Mama, stop it, her daughter Charlotte pleaded. No, someone needs to say it plain. Josephine stepped toward Clara. You show up in this town with no family, no name, and no way to give a man a child, and you think you can tell us who to trust? You're the one bringing bad luck down on all of us. Clara's hands clenched into fists. Maybe I am damaged goods, she said, her voice quiet but clear. Maybe I can't have children. Maybe my first husband sent me back because he thought I was worthless. She took a step closer to Josephine. But I'm not the one poisoning wells. I'm not the one beating men in the dark or trying to steal water from thirsty people. She took one last step close enough to see the fear in Josephine's eyes. So yes, I'm broken. But at least I'm trying to fix things instead of just tearing them down. A man's voice rang out. This woman is my wife. Eli had stepped forward. Clara's heart just about stopped. He looked right at her, then at the crowd. She's the bravest soul I have ever known. You want to call her worthless? Eli said, staring Josephine down. Go right ahead, but every person here knows the truth. She's worth more than this whole town put together. The silence was deafening. Then Patterson started clapping, slow at first, then steady. Soon the whole crowd was applauding. Josephine's face turned white with rage. This isn't over, she hissed. No, Clara agreed. It's just getting started. On the ride home, Clara finally broke the silence. Wife. He'd called her his wife. You didn't have to do that, she said softly, in front of everybody. Yes, I did. People will talk. Let 'em talk. Eli reached over and took her hand. I meant every last word. Clara's throat felt tight. We're not really married, Eli. Not in our hearts. Do you want to be? The question struck her like lightning. What? Married for real? Eli stopped the horses. I know it's fast and I know it's crazy, but I've spent 5 years living in the past, and I don't aim to waste another single day. Clara looked at him, at his weathered face and his steady eyes. Eli, I can't give you children, you know that. I'm not asking for children. I'm asking for you. He cupped her face in his hands. I don't need babies to be happy, Clara. I need someone who'll stand by me when the world is falling apart. Someone who will fight when there's no fight left. His thumbs wiped away tears she didn't know she'd cried. That's you. It's always been you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Yes, she whispered. Yes. I'll marry you for real. For always. And then Eli kissed her. This wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a promise. A fire that burned away all the doubt between them. We're completely insane, Clara laughed when they finally came up for air. Boone is trying to ruin us, and we're sitting here getting married. Eli gave her a real grin, the first she'd ever seen. Best decision I ever made. They rode the rest of the way holding hands. But as the ranch house appeared, their peace was shattered. Martha was running toward them, her face a mask of pure panic. It's Samuel, she screamed. He just collapsed. He's not breathing right." They found Samuel on the kitchen floor, his lips turning blue, his body shaking. He drank from the emergency water barrel. Martha sobbed. "We didn't know it was poison, too." Clara fell to her knees beside him, her mind racing. "Salt water. We need to make him vomit. Get as much salt water down him as we can." They worked like mad, Eli holding Samuel still while Clara poured the water down his throat. Again and again. At last, Samuel's body convulsed, and he threw up a dark liquid until he was empty. His color started to come back, and his breathing evened out. "He's alive," Clara breathed. "But we have to get him to a doctor. The nearest one's in Miller's Crossing. That's 20 miles. Then we ride now." They loaded Samuel into the wagon with Martha holding his head. Eli drove the horses harder than he ever had before. Clara rode beside them, a terrible thought forming in her mind. Boone had poisoned their emergency barrel, inside their house. The trouble in town wasn't a fight. It was a distraction. "Eli!" she yelled over the thunder of the hooves. "This was all a plan. They wanted us gone so they could poison the water in the house." Eli's jaw was set like stone. "I know, but right now we save Samuel. Everything else can wait." They got to Miller's Crossing long after midnight. The doctor, an old fellow with kind eyes, worked on Samuel for 2 long hours. "He'll live," he finally told them, but it was a close thing. Martha broke down in tears and Clara held her tight. "Keep him here overnight," the doctor said. "He needs rest and plenty of clean water." "We'll stay," Martha said at once. "You two need to get back to the ranch. If Boone's men were there once, they might come back." They rode home through the dark, weary to the bone. Clara couldn't shake the image of Samuel's blue face from her mind. "Eli," she said quietly. "Yeah? When we get married, I want it to be for something real. I want us to build a life, not just get by. A place where folks like Samuel and Martha are safe, where people like me aren't just tossed aside." Eli was quiet for a long while. "You know, before my first wife, Miriam, passed, she told me something. She said the only thing that matters is what you leave behind. Not land, not money, just the people you helped. I reckon I forgot that for a while. You reminded me. I didn't do anything. You held your ground, Clara. When anyone else would have broken run, you stood your ground. That's everything." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the strength in him, and rode on toward home, her own. "We are going to win this fight," she declared, her voice steady. "I do not know how just yet, but we will." He believed her. Eli kissed her forehead and said, "It is mighty inconvenient, you know." Clara actually laughed, a real sound of joy despite the poison and the fear. In that laugh was a strength that a man like Boone could never understand. It was love. By the time they got back to the ranch, the sun was painting the sky. It all looked so peaceful, but Clara knew better. She moved through the house, checking for anything out of place. "We need to pour out every drop of water," she said. Eli was already at it, dumping containers in the yard. "We can ride over to the Henderson place for water," he offered. Just then, a horse came pounding into the yard. Clara grabbed Eli's rifle and aimed, but then she saw who it was. Charlotte Caldwell, Josephine's girl, was sliding off her horse, crying her eyes out. "Please," she begged, nearly falling. "You have to help." "It is my little sister. She is burning up with a fever. The doctor will not come, and nobody else knows what to do. I heard about what you did for the Chinese man. Please, she is only 6 years old." Clara lowered the rifle. She knew what her mama, Josephine, had said about her. She knew the woman was just horrible. But her little girl, Lily, did not deserve to pay for that. Clara looked at Eli, and he just nodded. They both understood. Helping these folks could change everything, or it could change nothing at all. But a child's life was on the line, and Clara remembered what it felt like to be tossed aside. "Get back on your horse," she told Charlotte. "Show me the way." The relief on Charlotte's face was something to see. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Do not thank me yet," Clara said, grabbing her medicine bag. She swung onto her own horse and gave Eli one last look. His face was full of worry, but also pride. "Go on and save that little girl," he said. As Clara rode off, she knew a child's life was hanging by a thread. Little Lily Caldwell was burning up from the inside out. The heat came off the child in waves. She was a tiny thing with blonde hair stuck to her sweaty forehead and lips that were cracked and dry. Her little chest hitched with tiny, quick breaths. "How long has she been this way?" Clara asked. Josephine Caldwell, a woman who was always put together perfectly, stood in the corner looking like a wreck. 3 days, she whispered. "We figured it was just a summer cold. Then last night she started screaming about snakes in her bed. She did not even know who I was." Clara checked Lily's eyes. It was not a good sign. "Has she had any water?" Josephine shook her head. "She will not keep anything down." Then she hesitated. "Marcus Boone brought some over. Said it was from his private well, the purest around." Clara's blood ran cold. "When did he bring it?" 4 days ago, right before she got sick." Clara snatched the water pitcher and sniffed. She tasted a single drop. There was nothing obvious, but that did not mean a thing. "Get rid of this water," she ordered. "Every last drop that Boone gave you." "Why?" Josephine asked, confused. "Because I think he poisoned your daughter." Josephine's face went pale. "That is not possible." "That is... Marcus is our friend. He poisoned our well," Clara stated flatly. "He killed 17 of our cattle. He almost killed Samuel. Your daughter is not sick by accident. Boone did this to get some kind of hold over you." Clara worked all through the night, using willow bark for the fever and crushed charcoal to soak up the poison. The little girl fought and cried, but slowly, very slowly, the fever started to break. Clara's own hand was shaking from being bone-tired, but she kept her touch steady and calm on the little girl. "You're going to be just fine," she whispered to Lily. "I've got you." Around 3 in the morning, the fever finally broke. Lily's eyes fluttered open, and this time they were clear. She looked up at Clara, confused. "Who are you?" "A friend," Clara said, smoothing the damp hair from the child's face. "How you feeling?" "Thirsty." Clara helped her take small, careful sips of clean water. It stayed down. Behind them, Josephine let out a sound that was half sob, half sigh of relief. "She's going to pull through," Clara said, not even turning around. "She just needs rest and clean food now. Don't you let her drink any water from Boone." Josephine's voice was small. "I don't understand. Why would he do this to my daughter?" "Because it was never about you," Clara said, finally facing her. "Boone wants this land and this town. He'll hurt anyone, even a child, to get that control." But Josephine just stared at her daughter's sleeping face. "I was so cruel to you," she whispered. "The things I said." "Yes, you were," Clara agreed. "But your daughter didn't say those things. She didn't deserve to suffer because you were unkind." Josephine flinched. Clara stood up, every muscle aching with exhaustion. "Mrs. Caldwell, I don't care one bit if you like me or what you think I am, but you need to understand something." She stepped closer, right into Josephine's space. "Marcus Boone is the enemy here. Not me, not Eli, not any of the other folks just trying to survive this drought, just Boone. And if we don't stand together, he's going to pick us all off, one by one. What do you want from me?" "I want you to tell everyone the truth," Clara's voice went hard as iron, "about the water he sold you and what it did to your little girl. I want you to stand up in front of this whole town and admit you were wrong about him." Josephine looked like she would crumble. "I can't. My reputation." "Your reputation?" Clara let out a bitter laugh. "Your daughter almost died. That's a sight more important than your reputation. You don't get it. In this town, that's everything." "Maybe it's time that changed," Clara said, grabbing her medicine bag. "Think on it." She walked out into the dark, got on her horse, and rode for home. Eli was waiting on the porch. "How is she?" "She'll live." Clara nearly fell off the horse, but Eli was there to catch her. "Boone poisoned her, same as he did Samuel. He's using the water like a weapon. I know, Eli said, his jaw tight. While you were gone, Patterson and Henderson and the Morrison brothers all came by. They said Boone's threatening all of them, demanding they sign over their land as payment for his water. That's just plain robbery. That's what I told them. But without someone willing to stand up and say it out loud, our hands are tied. Josephine might, Clara said, thinking of the look on the woman's face. If she does, you think it'll be enough? I reckon so, but I'm not sure. Inside, Clara sank into a chair, too tired to move. There's more, Eli said, his face grim. Boone's called a town meeting for tomorrow. Says he's got an announcement that'll change everything. What kind of announcement? Don't know, but I've got a bad feeling about it. Clara closed her eyes. We have to be there. We will be, Eli promised, taking her hands. But right now you need to sleep. You've been up all night. I can't. There's too much to do. Clara, his voice was gentle but firm. Sleep. You're no good to anyone worn down to the bone. She was too exhausted to argue. He led her to his bedroom, a room she'd never been in before. Stay with me, she said, her voice small. After a moment's hesitation, he laid down beside her on the bed. I'm sure, she said, pulling him close. I just don't want to be alone right now. They lay there, fully dressed, her head resting on his chest. Eli, she said, her voice a bare whisper. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad you chose me, back at the depot when nobody else would. I'm glad it was you. His arms tightened around her. Me too, Clara, he said softly. Me too. She finally fell asleep, and for the first time in a long, long time, she dreamed of a place that felt like home. The next day, the town meeting was packed so tight you couldn't stir him with a stick. Clara and Eli stood in the back with Patterson, Henderson, and the Morrison brothers, a small wall of folks ready for a fight. Up in the front row sat Josephine Caldwell, holding a sleeping Lily. And at the front of it all, Marcus Boone stood like a king on a throne. Friends, his voice echoed through the room. I know these are hard times. That's why I've called you here. I've found a good, clean water source on my land, and I've been sharing it for a fair price. $1 a gallon ain't fair. $1 a gallon, someone yelled. Boone just smiled. That's not why I'm here. I have a proposal. He unrolled a big sheet of paper. A cooperative water agreement. You all sign over a small piece of your land as collateral, and I guarantee you'll have water for the next 5 years. Clara's blood ran cold. He's trying to steal the whole valley, she whispered to Eli. I know, he squeezed her hand. Just wait. People were murmuring, some even nodding. They were desperate. Then Josephine stood up, and the whole room went quiet. Mr. Boone, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Before anyone signs that paper, I think they deserve to know the truth about your water. Boone's smile faltered. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean my daughter. Josephine's voice rose, filled with a mother's fury. My 6-year-old daughter nearly died from a fever because she drank the pure, clean water you sold us. Gasps went through the crowd. That's a mighty serious accusation, Boone said, his smile gone completely. I hope you have proof. I have the woman who saved my daughter's life, Josephine declared, turning to the crowd. I treated this woman terribly. But when my Lily was dying, Clara was the only one who came to help. She saved my child from the poison Marcus Boone was trying to kill her with. The room exploded into chaos. That was when Clara stepped forward. My name is Clara Whitfield. Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Some of you know me as the bride nobody wanted. Damaged goods. The room fell silent again. Call me what you want, but Marcus Boone has been poisoning water all over this county. Our spring, the Caldwells, and who knows how many others. She's lying. Boone's face was beet red. She's crazy. I've got proof. Everyone turned to the doorway. Samuel Chen was standing there, pale and weak, leaning on Martha. "I saw Mr. Boone's men at the underground spring. They beat me and left me for dead." He held up a small glass bottle. "But I kept this soil sample. I had it tested. It's full of arsenic, the same poison that nearly killed me. And that little girl." Boone went white as a sheet. "You can't prove that came from my land." "I can prove it came from right where your men were digging," Samuel said, his eyes cold. "And the chemist who tested it is willing to testify. So are the ranch hands who saw your men riding away from the fire on Mr. Brennan's land." Patterson stepped forward. "And I'll testify that Boone's been threatening my family for weeks." Then another voice joined in, and another. Henderson, the Morrisons, and folks Clara didn't even know, all finding their courage together. That smile fell clean off Boone's face, replaced by pure fury. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled, stepping toward Clara. "I own the sheriff. I own half this county. By the time this ever sees a courtroom, if it ever does, y'all will have died of thirst." "Maybe," Clara said, holding her ground. "But you'll be dead from something worse." "What is that?" "Irrelevance." She waved a hand at the folks gathered around. "Look at 'em, Boone. They ain't scared of you anymore. They're standing together, and that's something you can't buy or threaten." Boone's hand twitched toward his gun. Eli stepped right in front of Clara, his own rifle ready. "Don't," Eli said, his voice low and steady. "There are 30 witnesses here. You draw on anyone, you'll hang for it." For a long second, nobody breathed. Then Boone let out a cold, ugly laugh. "Fine. You win this round," he said, backing away. "But this ain't over." "Oh, yes, it is." Sheriff Mitchell pushed through the crowd. He had 2 federal marshals with him, fellas Clara had never laid eyes on. "Marcus Boone, you are under arrest." Boone's jaw went slack. "What?" "You work for me." "Used to," the sheriff said, sounding tired. Then the federals showed up this morning with a letter sent to the governor. A very detailed letter. Clara glanced over at Samuel. He gave her the smallest of smiles. "Martha wrote it while I was healing up. Figured someone outside this county needed to know the truth." Boone made a run for it, but those marshals were on him in 2 steps. "This is not over," he screamed as they hauled him out the door. "You hear me?" Then the door slammed shut. A quiet fell over the room. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then one person started clapping and then another, and soon the whole place erupted with cheers and tears. The awful tension that had choked the town for months finally broke. Clara just stood there, taking it all in. Eli's arms wrapped around her from behind. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." "We did it," Clara said, turning to face him. "All of us. But you started it, darling. You stood tall when everyone else was ready to kneel." She looked around at her neighbors, shaking hands, clapping each other on the back, and hugging their families. "I just did what had to be done. That is what heroes always say. I am not a hero." "You tell that to little Lily Caldwell," Eli said, kissing her forehead. "Tell that to every soul in this room." Clara didn't have an answer for that. She just held on tight. The next few weeks went by in a hurry. With federal charges, Boone's trial was quick. He got 20 years in prison and the government took everything he owned. That hidden spring was declared public property belonging to everyone. For the first time in a long time, people had hope. Samuel got his strength back with Martha right by his side. They talked about leaving, but they stayed. This was home now, the place where they had fought and nearly died but survived. Josephine Caldwell even started acting like an ally, inviting Clara to her ladies' meetings. Clara always said no, but she appreciated the gesture. Then one morning, she woke up to a sound she had nearly forgotten. Rain. First a few taps, then a steady roar. She ran outside into the downpour, just lifting her face to the sky. Eli found her there, laughing and crying all at once. "It is raining," she yelled over the storm. "Eli, it is actually raining." "I noticed," he said, already soaked to the bone but grinning. "You think this means something?" "It means we are going to live," Clara said, grabbing his hands. "The cattle will survive, the garden will grow, everything is going to be okay." Right there in the middle of the storm, Eli dropped to one knee. Clara's heart just stopped. "I was going to wait for a better moment," he said, rain streaming down his face. but I have never been good at waitin'. Eli, just ask me. Clara May Whitfield, will you marry me? For real this time. No arrangements, just us. Yes, you did not let me finish. I did not need to. She kissed him right there in the rain. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Their wedding was simple. A young preacher held the service on the porch of their ranch. The folks who had stood with them were there to see it. Samuel and Martha stood up as their witnesses. Even Josephine Caldwell came with her daughters. Clara wore the same blue dress she had arrived in, and Eli wore his Sunday best. Neither of them cared about the fuss. Do you, Elijah Brennan, take this woman to be your wife? I do. And do you, Clara May Whitfield, take this man to be your husband? Clara looked at Eli, at his kind eyes and his strong hands that had held hers through it all. I do. With that, the preacher declared them husband and wife. As Eli kissed her, Clara felt something she had not felt in 5 long years. She felt whole, not fixed, but like a broken bone that heals up even stronger than it was before. Later that night, as they sat together on the porch under the stars, everything felt different. Eli, she said softly. Yeah? You remember telling me that you were falling in love with me? I remember. I was too scared to say it back then. I know. Clara turned to him, the moonlight making him look younger, lighter. I am not scared anymore. I love you. I have loved you since the day you asked me what I wanted instead of just telling me. A real warm laugh escaped him. Took you long enough, he said, pulling her close. I love you too, Clara Brennan. Clara Brennan. The name felt right. It felt like home. What happens now, she asked. Now, Eli said, we live, we work, and we build something good. And when the next storm comes, we will face it together. Together, Clara repeated. I like the sound of that. After a while, she spoke again. Thank you. For what? For choosing me when nobody else would. Eli was quiet for a second. Can I tell you something? Always. That day at the depot when I saw you standing there all alone, I did not just choose you. What do you mean? I mean, it was not like picking the best horse left at an auction. He turned to look her in the eye. It was like recognition, like seeing someone I had been looking for my whole life without even knowing I was looking. Tears burned in Clara's eyes. That does not make any sense. I know, he said with a smile. Love does not make sense. That is the whole point of it. You asked me why I built that room with all the locks. The truth is, when I saw you, I knew I had built it just for you, even though we had never met. That is crazy. Completely, he said. But here we are. Here we are. Clara thought about everything she had survived to get to that porch. She had spent so long believing she was broken, that she was worthless, but she was not. She had never been worthless. She had just been waiting for the right person in the right place to see who she was all along. You are crying, Eli said softly. I know. She laughed through the tears. Happy tears this time. Good, he said, wiping them away. I like happy tears better. They went inside together, to their home and to their future. The woman nobody wanted and the man nobody understood had finally found where they belonged. Two people who had been broken by the world found each other and built a life. Years down the road, when folks would ask Clara about her story, she would tell them about that day she stood on a platform all alone while the whole town laughed. She would tell them about a good man who asked what she wanted instead of telling her what to do. She learned that sometimes being cast out by everyone else just means you are being saved for the one person who truly matters. The secret, she would say, is not about finding someone who thinks you are perfect. It is about finding someone who sees you are cracked and chipped and loves you for it anyway. Someone who helps you build something brand new. She and Eli had 30 good years together before he passed on in his sleep. By then, their ranch had become a place that mattered, a home for outcasts and folks who had been thrown away. Clara lived on for another 15 years, long enough to see their story inspire others to stand tall when the world tried to knock them down. On her very last days, she thought about that young woman on the platform, who believed she was worthless. She smiled because she finally understood. Being the one nobody wanted was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning, and it had been worth every single struggle. The woman who once stood all alone was now never alone again. That is not luck, and it is not fate. That is a choice. It is the choice to keep going, to keep hoping, and to keep loving, even when it feels impossible. And that one stubborn choice is what makes all the difference in the world. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.